Hello everyone, welcome to another beginner review. This is actually another subscriber who had just submitted a game for review not long ago. So it's actually very interesting to see a player's progression. You would think that these beginner games are very similar to each other, but they're not. There are different lessons for us to learn from each of these games. And that's why doing these game reviews is valuable, in my opinion. So let's dive right in and see what happens in this game. So number 9, it's a good move. It's the modern AI Joseki. Number 10 is fine, right? It's not the most recommended move by AI, but it's a fine move. And the differences here are subtle. So normally, we have this Joseki, of course. This is probably the most common these days. White can keep playing on the outside like this, or save the corner, or take Sente, right? So I explained this in chapter 5. You can find this Joseki in one of my explanations. I covered this in at least one video, maybe 2 or 3. And the easiest way is just to connect here for white. And black's response is right here, right? And this is the Joseki, very peaceful. And the subtle difference here is that after white plays this standing down, right, on the second line, black's correct move is right here. So the idea is to break out like this for black, while white takes number 9, relatively small. It's not that important anymore, especially with number 10 here. So if you play here, then whites can keep adding pressure on top. And the difference is, again, life and death, right? If you have this shape, then black is not really afraid of whites playing on the outside, because black can come into the corner and live very easily. Whereas, in our game situation, number 10 is here, and black cannot come into the corner and make a real eye here, and that's why this group is potentially under more pressure. So the difference here is subtle between number 10 here and here, but it does have life and death implications for black. So in the game, black played here. I'll give you a pass if you're a beginner, double-digit Q player, but if you're a dumb player, you have to know that number 11 is not the correct move in this situation. It has to be right here, giving up number 9 and playing on the outside. So that's black's optimal option in this situation. So what do you do as white in this situation? The board is empty, right? So always think about corner closers and approaches. So if you've been following my channel, I talk about this in every game because that's very important for beginners to know. And we have number 12, right? Very slow move. You don't really need to worry about this group. It's already settled. It has access to the corner, right? If you play elsewhere, then black can't really attack you. You have access to the corner. You have plenty of eye space. That's why, again, you need life and death practice, because it teaches you how much eye space seems like enough. And of course, you can always jump towards the center. So white should not be worried at all about the corner. It's already settled. It's a nice shape. And white should play elsewhere, right? So number 12, again, it's a slow move, even by beginner standards. Now, if you're black, what should you do? Playing on the side, number 13, is okay, right? It's not as good as playing on the corner, but black is clearly trying to build something here on the lower side. And I think number 13 is totally fine. And then we have number 14. So we're going to see a bunch of mistakes by white early in the game, and very few mistakes by black, and then it's going to be the reverse after the opening. So number 14 is one of those moves that are not great, right? So if you're a beginner, you're always thinking, I should invade if my opponent's trying to build. There are 2 things wrong about that. The first thing is that you can build your own as well, right? The board is empty. Build out your own territory first. And that should be an approach, right? When the board is empty, play the approach moves on the corners. And second, this invasion doesn't really work because it can't be ignored, right? Black can just play a corner closer And you can't really do anything with this move. You can't build anything on the lower side. All you do is destroy some of your opponent's points here on the lower side, but you are not threatening to attack your opponent here as white. So that's another problem, right? The harshest invasions put a lot of pressure on your opponent, right? You're attacking your opponent by invading. That's the best type of invasion, and that is not what number 14 here is for, right? So it's worth spending a minute, right? It's a very typical beginner and Q level move, but it's not putting any pressure on black. Black can ignore you. Black is already settled here on the left side. Black can play a corner closer here and settle the group on the right. And it's just kind of boring for white. What are you doing here? You're not doing anything here. You can't build anything off of this move. So the best invasions are the invasions that put pressure on both black groups, left and right, right? Or at least you put pressure on one group. But if you're just invading to cancel out some territory, it's probably 15, 20 points of territory, then it's not as valuable. And you might come under attack, right? So number 15 is fine, right? Preventing white from coming to the left side. If you don't play this, then white will get ice space here on the left and destroy more of black's territory. So number 15 is fine. And number 17 is a good move, right? It's a corner closer. We like that. Number 18, not a great move because it really solidified black's corner, right? With these 3 stones, that's really solid. White just cannot contest the corner anymore. Whereas a corner closer, as we say, is not 100% yet, right? You still have moves on the outside like this to harass the corner, potentially come into the corner if black ignores you, right? All kinds of moves here. So number 17 doesn't mean black has the whole corner yet. But after this reinforcement, black is very strong. And number 20, terrible move. Because of this hane, and number 21 is a very good move. So white is really just trying to settle the shape here. But with 21 and 23, black is very strong. And you can see black's influence radiating toward the right side here, right? And 24, these are all terrible moves. Please do not learn any of these. 18, 20, 22, 24, these are all terrible moves. It's just an ugly shape, right? 24 should at least be here, right? Or if you're trying to increase ice space, try these hane and connect moves, right? These are very efficient moves at creating more ice space for you down here on the first and second lines. In this case, this is probably better, right? So white is mostly alive now, but black, again, has sente and can play on the right side, right? So 24 is an ugly shape, and now white switches to the left side. And number 30, it's another beginner mistake. So 99% of the time you have to connect here. Unless you're sure standing down here is really good for your ice space. But here it's terrible for your ice space because there's always going to be this peep that's threatening the cut. You have to connect. Otherwise, black will cut off these 2 stones. Very valuable for endgame and also very bad for white's ice space, right? So you always leave this peep. And in this situation, the peep works. And black is going to connect, and white's shape here is terrible, so you can't do anything here. White has no move here on the second line, and white will have 0 eyes, right? So if your opponent plays this as a beginner, because you only see beginners play number 30, it's a terrible move. Consider this peep and see if you can build anything off of it. And in this situation, you can with 31 and 33. And white has 0 eyes after all these moves. Right, so even if black played here in the game, be a little more aggressive. I think this is better, right? There's obviously more weaknesses here for white, but I think this is okay. Even this, black is clearly winning at this point because you just can't do something like this in a game of Go, right? That's why number 14 is bad. You're putting 0 pressure on your opponent. And you're spending all these moves in exchange for black moves on the outside, which are clearly more valuable, right? So white solidified black space here on the lower left, and black played 21, 23, and 25. 3 very, very solid moves, right? and black is clearly in the lead. So as black, what do you do now? The board is empty, you have Sente, play somewhere that's empty, right? So that's why number 33 is not a good move. It's not the best move. It's already settled here, the lower side. You don't need another move here. It's really not doing much. You're not building much, you're not destroying much, you're not attacking white, you're not saving yourself, right? So number 33, that's a wasted opportunity. 34, playing on the first line. It's an endgame move, right? Another terrible move. And what should you do if your opponent plays an endgame move on the first or second lines? Ignore it, right? See if you can ignore it. And in this situation, you can, as black, actually, because you already have nice ice space here on the lower left, and you have number 33, so you're not afraid of being attacked at all in this situation. You should just play somewhere else. Ignore the endgame moves, because the endgame moves, by definition, are smaller than opening moves. Opening moves are more valuable, right? So anywhere on the board, on the top half, is more valuable than 35, because 35, 34, these are endgame moves that should not be played at this stage of the game, right? So white comes into the right side, and that's what black, our subscriber here, complained about. He asked me about how to deal with a stone like this on the fourth line. So the first thing to know is that it's very hard to kill it, right? You can try to attack it, but it's on the fourth line, it's very easy to jump out, and it's pretty easy to build a base. On the second or third lines, it's not as good as, say, invading on the third line. But I get it, right? It's a good strategy to invade on the fourth line because it's so easy to jump out. And it's not that hard to get down to the third and second lines to build eyes, right? So if your opponent splits your side, you should at least pincer from one side. That's usually how it's played. You can't just leave it here, right? So in this case, if I were black, I would just pincer from one side. White will have to play this approach, also an extension, and this is how it's going to go on, right? It'll be something like this. And black is still clearly in the lead. In the game, black played at 37. It's a big move, approach move, always big, but you're ignoring something bigger, potentially, right? So white extends here. And these two moves greatly reduce the value of black's wall at 21, 23, and 25. These three stones used to be a wall, and now it's kind of canceled out by 36 and 38, right? And then we have 39, which is a wasted move. I mentioned protecting the cut in the previous game review I did for the subscriber. And here is the same challenge. Should you protect the cut or not? Can you ignore it? First of all, you can always Atari from this side and preserve the corner. And these three stones are doing just fine, right? So that's one way. If you're not sure about how this is going to go, right? This is potentially complicated. But personally, I'm not too worried. I think it's white that has to try to build something out here. Is the corner in danger? Maybe, maybe not, right? So it's going to get complicated. Even if the corner dies, you can just swallow up 38 and 36 on the outside. Black is still not too bad. That's my guess. Didn't run it through an AI, but that would be my gut feeling. It's not going to hurt black that much. You still have a chance on the outside. So it's not a cutting point that I would worry about, right? So that's the first thing. You shouldn't really worry about every cutting point that you see. And second, more importantly for beginners, if you're playing very conservatively, there are different ways to protect this cut. It's not just this connection. This is just not enough thinking, right? Not enough thinking. You have to think, what are the ways that I can protect this cut? If you do decide to protect the cut. And there are many ways to do it in this situation, right? At least consider the tiger's mouth. This is more efficient. Good for territory down here, right? You can come into white's right side more easily with this move. Or this. This is putting more pressure on 38, right? Just white to answer. If white answers, you have Sente. That's good. white doesn't answer, again, it's much better for black to come into white's territory this way. Then if you connect here, doing nothing. This is a wasted move. And this greatly reduces your score, according to Katago, actually. These are the details that beginners need to start paying attention to. You may not get it right every time, but when it comes to protecting cuts, always consider the tiger's mouth. And in this situation, the knight's move, right? These knight's move also work. They also protect against the cuts, right? Consider these moves and see if they're better. And in this situation, they are. And oftentimes they are, right? Because connecting here is very slow. Very inefficient. It's basically a wasted move. And if you play a wasted move, even with the lead early on, you're going to waste away the lead, right? So white is playing more efficiently now, right? With these three moves. Black's wall is gone, influence is mostly gone, and the right side is all of a sudden white's sphere of influence, right? So 41 is okay. Actually, 40 should be the low approach. The low approach is always better for territory, right? If you play here, then black is gaining more territory here. And black really owes a move on the outside, right? You need to close the corner by playing at 45 anywhere, any 4 corner closer. And it's usually very hard for beginners and cube players to pull off anything on the corner. So if you're a professional, if you're a high done player, amateur, then you might be able to pull something off here as white. But in this situation, if you're a beginner, it's very hard for white to do anything in the corner. So if the corner is all blacks, then black should be pretty happy about this exchange, right? So black should still have the lead despite number 39. But 45 is smaller, right? This is smaller than the corner closer. So white should really contest the corner, putting more pressure on the corner here. Instead, white played here, which is okay. And this is questionable by white playing on top. You should still follow the Joseki, right? Playing on top doesn't give you much, right? Especially with 52. If you can get to the 3-3 point, consider the 3-3 point. Black cannot cut, that's obvious. This is a better shape, right? So if you play at 52, then this is over concentrated. And 48 is a very slow move. It's a 1 space extension off of these 3 stones, right? So it's a terrible shape for white. And if you're black, you should also consider the 3-3 point. Move into the 3-3 point, settle your group. And this is valuable, right? This is very valuable, very good shape, very efficient. And you have a way out too on the 3rd or 4th line, right? This is a good way for black to continue. So in the game, black played here. It's not a bad move, but of course the 3-3 point here is more valuable because you can settle the whole group and take the corner territory. Not a bad move, right? You're trying to build the upper side, you're trying to reduce white's influence on the left side, and white comes in, right? So again, it's similar to number 14. It's not doing much, right? It's not putting any pressure on black, so black just plays the corner closer, and white plays this kind of a knight's move, 1 space extension. Black gets the corner, 57 is okay. Not conventional, but the shape is very nice. Black is settled and alive. And black still has the lead, I think, at this point. And white plays a very slow move at number 62, but settling the group, right? White wants to settle the group on the upper side. So now what do you do? Now the corners and the sides are mostly settled. As black, what do you do? And it's not easy to answer that, right? So is there any weak group for black? Not really. Black is all alive. All 4 groups are alive. Is there a weak group for white? Also not really, right? White is alive here. Maybe not. I mean, yeah, moves like this, potentially. That could give white some trouble, right? You can at least kill these 3 stones, and white will live this way. Or if white doesn't let you live, then white is still dead, actually. White needs to escape, right? So it's actually a weak group, but it needs some calculation This group on the right, it's pretty solid. Not a lot of territory, actually, if you play this Hane after this exchange. But it's still a strong group, and it's mostly alive. So what should you do? Black should really play on the left side, because the left side is very flat. White stones are all on the third line here, 48, 12, and 6. So it's very flat. So as long as white only secures the left side on the third line, or maybe the fourth line here, black should be able to win, right? White doesn't have enough. Black's corner is very big. Here is about 20 points, right? At least 18, 20 points. The corner is going to be big. If it's a beginner game, it's going to be very big. And white doesn't have a whole lot, right? White doesn't have a whole lot of territory, just the left side. So the question is really how big can white's left side get? So black should really just be playing on the left side here, keeping white down. Even if you just play relatively peacefully like this, you're always threatening the cut, right? This should be good, right? Black still has more influence than white toward the center, so black will end up beating something in the center. Right? So that should be the game plan. So when you're entering middle game, do not play number 63. Do not play these endgame moves, right? Again, this is an endgame move. When the board is empty like this, there are definitely more valuable moves out there. And if you're white in this situation, do not answer the endgame move at 64. Again, consider something bigger. Can you build something on the left side if black is not doing anything here, right? Can you play on the 5th line or 6th line, right, to try to build something? And the answer is yes in this situation. This is what's really important, right? So black is trying to build here, trying to move out. It's okay, not the most valuable, right? So both sides will leave the left side for a bit. 74, good move, right? It's finally trying to build the left side. 75, 77. It's okay, right? It's kind of sitting off this group. And 78. So again, the most important part is the left side. Black really needs to play something on the left side to keep white down. And in the game, black played this series, and it might seem like black gained a lot by capturing number 78. Also gained territory here. But the problem is that white also gained on the outside. So white also gained here. So this sequence, it seems better for black, but actually it's bad for black. So that's a little counterintuitive, right? For most amateur players, it will seem counterintuitive, but it's actually bad for black. And 88 is a very good move because it builds white on the left side and reduces black's potential here in the center, right? So when black finally comes in, white is able to get territory on the 4th line and 5th lines here, right? So this is what ended up happening. So white is actually pretty big, building on the 5th line. And now we are entering endgame, right? Because center is mostly settled, right? No one is really taking a huge chunk of the center. Both sides will have to come in. So let's look at the endgame together. So what are the big moves? So at this point, the center is mostly occupied. Black is not surrounding it. White is not surrounding it. So what are the big moves in this game? Always look at the 3rd line, 2nd line, and 1st line, right? So what are the big moves on the 3rd line, if any? Actually, there is none in this game because, as we saw before, number 63, all the sides and corners are settled, right? So that means no big things on the 3rd line. But what about the 2nd line, right? Lots of moves on the 2nd line. So right here, capturing this stone, very big, very, very big. This Hane and Connect, also very, very big, very valuable. What else? Here, lower left corner, also very, very valuable, right? Not as valuable as the other two, but also very valuable. right? So these are the moves that you should see. And what about the first line? If it has to be the first line, it has to be this, right? This is sente for white. So if you're white, you have to get to this. You just have to get to this. It's also sente for black, actually. If you play somewhere else, this is also sente for black, no? Because of life and death implications. You have to play here as white. If you ignore it, then black can kill white very easily. White is already dead, right? So this is what we say worth 100 points because it's sente on the first line, this honey and connect for both sides. For both sides, that's 100 points, right? So both sides should get to this first when it comes to the end game because it's sente for both sides and it's so important, so big. It's 100 points. Remember that, and you should discover this, right? It's actually bigger, more important than the end game moves on the second line, right? So that's how you approach the end game, not just these random moves towards the center, right? These are not as big as you think. Once 106, you're building up a few points of territory here, not as big as 107, 109. These are very big moves. 111. So great job, black, so far. And we see the monkey jump again. So I actually just addressed this in the previous video. How do you deal with monkey jump? It's like a large nice move, right? On the first line, right? So 115 is correct. 116 is correct. What's the next move? It has to be this block. You have to block here. What's the shape? What's the shape? Can white kill this stone? No, because black can Atari at 119 right here. You capture, you can Atari here, doesn't matter, but you connect. You connect this stone back, and white is cut off, and white will die on the inside. That's the idea. That's how you deal with the monkey jump. It's very important. It's the second time, at least the second time we saw here in my game reviews that the beginner cannot handle this. You have to know this. Just something you have to know. You have to block here. So white's best response is to pull back. You can Atari again and connect, right? This is how you seal the corner. So in the game, black doesn't know how to do this. You cannot play this exchange first. Now these three stones are safe and connected. There's nothing else for black to play here. Now you can't block, right? So 117, it's a terrible move. It's the wrong move, right? So if you're not sure, if you're watching this, I think I explained it clearly. If not, please ask me. This is so important because it's going to come up in games and you can't afford to play like this as black in every situation. You're just losing too many points. You're winning this whole game. Now you just lost a ton of points. A ton of points. You just lost 4 points? 5 points? It's a lot, right? It's a lot. And you shouldn't have to suffer like this. Okay, so what else is big? 126. We finally get to this. Very big move. What else is there? Right, so white is trying to come in to the center here. That is great. And another lesson coming up is black. I don't know what black was calculating for, right? Maybe you should calculate a little more carefully, which is fine. If it's just the wrong calculation, it's fine. But if you calculated correctly and concluded that you couldn't do anything here, then you shouldn't really sacrifice all these stones. 133, 35, 37, 39. These are all being captured. And 143 too. You just gave your opponent 4 stones to capture. And that's a no-no, right? You shouldn't do something where in the end game you play a move, another move, and another move, and your opponent ended up capturing all these moves, and you gain nothing. That means you're just giving away your opponent's points. And these moves are all of negative value, right? It's like filling in your opponent's territory. It's really doing nothing and giving your opponent points and wasting all these moves, right? So all these 5 moves are wasted, completely wasted, right? That's something you should avoid. It's actually easy to do as beginners. We've seen this here on the channel. A lot of these mistakes, endgame mistakes by beginners, just like kind of venturing a little bit inside your opponent's territory, but ended up actually, losing a lot of pieces and giving your opponent a ton of points, right? So how should this be played? Just push from the outside. Do something like this. This is much better. This is much, much better, right? White is much smaller compared to the actual game, like this. This is just not okay for black. This is all white's territory now. And 146, why is this move here? It's wasted. It's not a Tari, there's nothing here. So 146, a wasted move. Terrible move. 147, it's an interesting move. Usually it doesn't work. If you bump this way, of course your opponent is going to connect. And this stone is going to be very tight in liberties, and it's going to be in an awkward position, right? So 147, not a good move. You should just play something like this to build, to keep building. Right? When you play here, again, is this connection the only move for white? The answer is no. Why should play here? This is moving faster than the game move, right? A little bit faster, but it matters. Black can't come in. It's tiger's mouth. So if it's something like this, then white still benefits compared to something like this, right? So all these details matter. And black played the smaller side. I think this side is still bigger, right? So this really doesn't do black any good. Again, we see a connection. You should consider other moves. This tiger's mouth is better, right? It's better for points, right? Connection is always too slow. You're not gaining anything. You could gain more by playing this tiger's mouth. Another key lesson, I think, for beginners in this video. So black is building, right? 160, very small. It's 1 point, right? It's preventing black from coming in here so that eventually white will have to connect here. Not now, right? Eventually, all the liberties are exhausted. It's an Atari, and white will have to connect. So 160, if you play here, it's only 1 point. And we have moves that are more than 1 point. Even if you play here on the first line, that's 2 points, right? Because it reduces your opponents by 1 point. Huh? I mean, yeah, in that sense, it is also 1 point. So these are the smallest. That's the key takeaway. It's that these are the smallest. 160 is the smallest. You can do so many other things. This is clearly more than 1 point, right? So 161, good move. 163, big move. 164 is wrong. It's just simply wrong. It has to be right here. It has to be this hane on the first line, right? Now black cannot come into the corner, obviously. If you play here, then black can seal off the corner like this. White is just giving away points at this point, right? Both sides are giving away points. So these endgame moves are actually worth studying for beginners. You need to go back and study your endgame, and that's how you improve. Otherwise, you're going to keep making these mistakes. What is 165 trying to do? White is alive and all connected. White has a million eyes already, and all you do is filling in white's territory. It's a wasted move. It's a negative move. Black would do better by passing, right? If you pass, your opponent doesn't get his point. If you play and fill in your opponent's territory, it's 1 point for your opponent. So it's a terrible move. You just have to eliminate all these moves, and then you'll become a better player, right? So just see these wasted moves. These are okay. These are just setting the boundaries. Can you block here? Yes, you can block here. Nothing will happen. Whereas if you play here, white will get this Atari, and you lose 1 more point for nothing, right? You lose this point for nothing. So 184, it's dame, right? You have to recognize dame as well. It's gaining you 0 points. There's a cutting point again at 185, but does black need to protect it? Can white do anything? No, white can't do anything here. Black is safe, right? So again, you have to calculate. You just can't see a cutting point and think, I have to connect. No, you don't have to connect. At least not now, when there are other things going on the board. If white plays here, now you have to connect, right? Just need to calculate. Just need to calculate. This way, with the stone, it makes a huge difference. But without this stone on the outside, without 186 on the outside, you do not have to play this move. And there are more valuable moves on the outside that you have to get to, right? So many endgame mistakes throughout this game. And there are many lessons for every beginner to learn, because I'm sure not every beginner can spot all the errors that I just pointed out. And maybe there are errors that I did not point out, right? So these are okay. What's big in this situation? This is small. This is still big. This is still big coming into the corner. Yeah, and we have this honey and connect too, which I ignored, right? This is very big for black, which means it would have been big for white to get to this point as well, right? So in the end, do you need to play 220? Do you need to protect this cutting point? No, nothing's happening. Black is going to die. Do not need a move to fill in your own territory if nothing's happening, right? You have to calculate. It should be easy calculation. This is easier than most of the Zumego problems that you do. This is just supposed to be easy. It shouldn't be that hard. You just have to slow down for 10 seconds, maybe 5 seconds is enough, and calculate. Nothing to be afraid of, right? So again, filling in dame, 221. When these boundaries are not set, you have to play for points. You can't just play dame before these boundaries are set, right? So white pushes here, black loses 1 more point. So white fills in, and entirely get it, but it's okay. That's the end of the game. And black actually loses if the Komi is 6.5. And black wins if the Komi is 0.5. So it's a very close game on the board. It's very close. Black has about a 2-point lead, 2-3 points lead. But the end result is not the key here. I think we've gone through a lot of these mistakes throughout the game, and you just have to learn from these mistakes, catch them when you're playing these mistakes, and try to avoid them in the future. As always, many thanks to the subscriber who shared this game with us. And if you have any questions or confusion, or if you want to have your own game reviewed, please reach out. Best of luck to you all, and I'll see you in the next game review. Thank you.